Might not be the smartest idea to bring my fancy camera out in the snow, but here I am. I knew it was going to snow, but I thought it was just going to be a frosting, as they say. That's not what I came out to talk about, though. Actually, I'm going to find cover before I make any further comments. Yeah, there's too much snow flying around for me to be out. Not under cover. Get into the camera and maybe cause problems, but so here I am with this picturesque scene. Snow landing on the barricades. I was just reminded of somebody that I used to work with, and I guess I'm never going to work with her again. I haven't heard from her in probably 2 years. But our connection goes back, I think, like 5 years, maybe even longer. She wanted to make a documentary film about the world's most interesting person. And that, of course, is me. And I gave up a lot of hours for this. I mean, not as much as she did, but still, I made myself more than available. Gave it everything. I mean, I can be pretty self-deprecating, and I possess a certain level of self-loathing. But she wanted to do something, and I begrudgingly admitted, all right, I get it. A guy who bears his soul through payphone calls isn't somebody kind of guy you find every day. And a guy who follows and checks in on payphones every day and messes with the payphone of the blah blah blah. I got it. Like, I could make her an unusual profile. Others have written about me, and like, and others have read what others have written about me, and they always remember it. I had a boss once who, at Time Warner, who didn't know anything about the first New York Times article they posted about me. He didn't know that that was me. He had read it years earlier. So when this came up in conversation, and I referenced that's the story. It was in the old circuits section, which was the tech and internet section of the Times when the internet was up and coming, I guess. There's no longer a circuits section, but that doesn't matter. Somehow it came up in conversation that article was about me, and he was like, "Oh, I remember that article. That was really weird." And he was making it clear that this was not weird in a good way. He just thought it was really messed up and strange. I haven't read that article in a long time. I don't really even remember what his problem was, but he clearly remembered it. So this documentary was about me. It was supposed to be just follow me around. That's what a documentary is, right? I was often uncomfortable with this because having somebody follow you around with a big camera is just weird. It draws attention to yourself, obviously, and that's not something I like to do in an ordinary, everyday circumstance. But over time, I started to feel that this just wasn't going where I wanted it to go, or where I was anticipating it would go. It wasn't about me, it was about her. And I was just kind of a prop. There was so much of my backstory that wasn't going to make it into this film because she didn't think it was appropriate or interesting. One thing that I did prevail upon her was to film me in the shower, but not full bore naked or anything. I'd be sitting down, and you wouldn't see my enormous schlong. But it was a nice scene. It was a nice setup. Very cinematographic, I guess, or whatever the term is. The reason I'm thinking of it today is that it's been, I think, 2 years since we last did anything. And I'm still using the transparent shower, or it's not totally transparent, but the almost transparent shower curtain that we used. While my dark one, the black shower curtain that I normally used, is still sitting on the couch. We just used the transparent one for, I guess, obvious reasons, so you could get sort of a grainy profile of me. When we first started doing this, my comments sort of brought her to tears. I was talking about, I don't remember what I was talking about, to be honest with you, but she was openly moved by whatever the hell I said. But in time, it just became monotonous, and everything. I started boring her. She started boring me. She followed me to the cemetery once, where I began the process of making my final arrangements to be cremated and stuffed into a columbarium niche. She didn't come in with me into the office. That would have been kind of weird. Although we did seek permission for that, but we didn't get it. So I stealthily brought in my field recorder and made audio of the conversation. It was pretty good quality, too. So she followed me there. She followed me through, she came with me into the shower. She never came into the shower with me, but she followed me. I demonstrated how I did that Link NYC Mr. Softy thing. It was just a ton of stuff, and she'd be following me on Fifth Avenue. And people would look at me and they'd be like, "Whoa, she's filming you? That's cool." She just followed me everywhere. But then COVID came, and she was a bit cavalier about it at first, but she quickly changed her tone on that matter. So we haven't done anything in like probably 2.5 years now, and my battery's running out, so I'm going to start it. I'm going to replace the battery in this camera. So when I say she followed me everywhere, she at least tried to. One of my signature traits, and one of the things that this was supposed to focus on, was my predilection for taking epic long walks, double-digit mileage, which for a span of time I was doing almost every single day. And that proved to be a little too ambitious. We got as far as, I wouldn't say this if I didn't think it was relevant, but she's pretty big. She probably weighs like 200 pounds, and she just couldn't keep up with me. I'd walk a half mile, and she'd practically be hyperventilating. So she didn't want to follow me by car, because that would be kind of weird. I suggested that maybe she just stand in place and, get me from a distance, and then pan around and follow me as I pass the camera or something. Nothing, I don't know. I was sort of stepping into her territory there. So, in short, and this was also supposed to focus on my fact that I'm a trained classical pianist with a past as a concertizing person who played piano recitals. And she would record me at the piano, but these recordings were awful in so many ways. She just didn't know how to film or how to record classical music. You'd hear the thumping of the piano keys, and you'd hear just all the wrong stuff. And I just didn't have it in me to tell her that sounds really awful, because I don't think she would care what I thought. So she didn't know anything about classical music, and so what do we got here? We've got Someone who knows nothing about classical music trying to follow a guy who walks 12 miles a day. How do I want to phrase this? Someone who knows. I'm a classical pianist who walks 12 miles a day, being trailed by someone who knows nothing about classical music and can't walk half a mile without hyperventilating. And I don't mean to be mean about that, but it was really dragging the project to its knees, if you will. And she didn't have a sense of humor about it. She found it irritating. Trying to keep up with me, she found it irritating. But she made no apologies. And I don't want to say it was wasted time, but there's no way I'm going to continue with it now. I'm just in a different frame of mind. The idea of somebody following me around with a camera is just feels gross. Another thing I couldn't prevail upon her was that I believe, I had this conversation with a few friends already, but I believe that in a generation or two, the stigma that has historically been assigned to masturbation, that stigma is going to be erased. Maybe not completely, but I think public masturbation is going to be allowed up to a point, not full bore jerking off onto a park bench, but I think that little gestures of self-gratification are going to be accepted in the same way as public displays of affection are today. Public PDAs, as they call them, between, two people. Kiss on the cheek or whatever. I think there's going to be a limit to it, but some level of self-love is going to be allowed in public, and maybe I'm just completely wrong about this, or I don't care, but the reason I bring this up is I tried to have this conversation with her, and this was 4 years ago, I think, and she did not even want to hear the word. She did not, and she didn't want to go with my idea of taking the shower scene to a different level and documenting what I actually do in the shower, which is once in a while I jerk off. Big deal, right? I mean, there's your shocking headline: single man lives alone and masturbates. And I thought it would be something different for a film like this, and it might be considered scandalous even. I don't know why it would be, but I wanted to talk about it in a way that made the act seem soulful and not selfish or simply self-gratifying. Self-love is a soulful evocation, but she just wouldn't even go there. She seemed to think all male sexuality was just icky and gross, and that sexuality, if it wasn't being directed toward her, she wanted no part of it. Didn't want to talk about it. But I'm done with it now. We haven't had a conversation in probably 2 years, but she doesn't seem to have handled COVID very well, or the solitude, or the quarantine. I didn't either, but I'm not going to dump that on her. But yeah, I was reminded of it because I was cleaning off the couch and I noticed that the shower curtain that we swapped out for is still sitting on my couch. I think that's been there for like 3 years now. It's been a conversation piece, though. The women that have been over since then got a laugh out of this whole account. I didn't tell them this whole story because it's boring, but I did tell about the masturbation differential, or the different attitudes we had about it. But I say, if you want to do a documentary about a guy like me, how can you not include something that's been a part of my life since I was 13? It just seems obvious to me, but icky to her. So I was here yesterday, the infamous Doomsday Payphone. It looks like somebody, first I thought somebody took the card I left in that match and left that one, but in fact, it's like this one fell to the ground. I don't remember if I went into this detail, but the phone number that I got on here uses pictures that I took of the touch-tone buttons on, I don't think it was this payphone, I don't remember which one it was, it doesn't matter. I think it's a pretty cool card, but maybe it's aesthetically a little clumsy, but that's me for you. And it looks like somebody picked up the phone and left it off the hook. Oh, you know what? That was probably me. Yeah. I think I did do that after I called the payphone radio again. And there again is a vestige of the "we need more payphones" vandal. This used to have those words handwritten on it. Somebody was going around to payphones. I saw them all over, from Coney Island up to Pelham Bay in the Bronx. Somebody would handwrite individual stickers and stick them on payphones everywhere, saying "we need more payphones." I never had any clue who that was. And here's the beautiful strip mall that is the site of the Doomsday phone. This enclosure does provide some cover from the snow. So I feel okay having the camera out here, but I gotta be careful. Make sure there's still dial tone. Yep. We actually did some filming at the Doomsday Payphone. In fact, I think that might have been the first location. That might have been the first time I met her in person. I told her to meet me at 21st Street and, 33rd Road. There's a different angle on the phone, just for kicks. But we were filming here, and I was talking about, I had just come out of an abusive relationship, and I was talking about how I've always been vulnerable to abusive relationships. Oh wow, is that dude about to use the phone? Probably not. But I was talking about that, and later she would tell me that she showed that video clip to her colleagues. I think she still has an instructor or something like it, a mentor. She had shown that clip to a few of her colleagues, and they all said the same thing, that they wanted to see more of me. At that point in the project, she was talking about doing interviews with like 5 or 6 people, somehow or other using the payphone as a starting point, or just a point of departure. I think one guy had a payphone in his garage or something, and he talked about he didn't talk about payphones. He didn't talk about it as a payphone though. He had some other story about it. How he got it or something. I don't know. That was the original project, but then she showed the interviews that she was getting to her peers, and they convinced her to focus on me and not those other guys. Is that guy actually going to use that payphone? This is driving me crazy. No, okay, he's not. But we were filming here, and as I was saying all this stuff about being vulnerable to abusive relationships, these kids from the high school around the corner were getting out of school, and they saw all this fancy camera equipment, and they said, "Fuck your camera," and they were screaming it as loud as they could, and they hurled their bodies at the phone booth. I was really impressed that the thing didn't come crashing down. And then they started laughing and screaming and jumping up and down and kind of making fools of themselves. But I didn't even flinch. I didn't stop talking. I didn't fall off brand, if you will. I heard that term yesterday. Somebody described themselves as off brand. And I kind of like it. It's kind of pretentious, but I did not even flinch. And the kids just moved on. They didn't bother us, but they did make a lot of noise and ruckus. But yeah, this phone and I go way back. Let's put it that way. Because we filmed there at least once, and it's been a part of my life in many ways. There also used to be a phone over here under that lamppost, this one, and there was a standalone clamshell right at the base. Some payphone service provider somewhere, I forget which one, I think it was down south, they had a contest, a photo contest, where they were giving away a like $25 Amazon gift card to whoever took the best picture of a payphone. And I took a picture of that one. And it's a cool angle because it has I'll show you the Upper East Side skyline behind it. I took the shot, obviously, from the street. And that phone had, well, you can't see it now. It was a clear night, but the Upper East Side of Manhattan the skyline is lurking behind all that snow. So it was a cool shot. You had this like the most moneyed stretch of road you might find anywhere in the world, the Upper East Side. Well, probably not as moneyed as other areas, but still, it's a snapshot of wealth behind one of the least moneyed objects you'll find anywhere. So I submitted that photo to the contest, and my girlfriend submitted another photo from Flushing Meadows of a payphone that a long abandoned Verizon, and she won the contest. It was really cool. I thought it was really cool. But my little attempt didn't seem to get their attention, but what can you do? Another reason I was thinking about the documentary thing was that I think I'm finally ready to go live with a new radio, and I'll just take it in stride. I have years and years worth of audio that I made while I was showering. And I started sitting in the shower some years ago. It's one of the best fundamental changes I've made to my diurnal routines. But it's the closest I come to meditation, which I've never been able to follow through with because there's too many mental ticks blasting off in my brain. But naturally enough, me being in the shower reminds me of, or me thinking about this reminds me of all the audio that I made for that documentary, or audio and video, of course, but I did the same thing for the film that I do every day. Here's a screen I've never seen. on one of these things. I don't know if that's even visible, but it says your recent screens appear here. I have no idea what that means. I think they did their weekly maintenance overnight today. They usually come out and fix these things between midnight and 8 a.m. And around here, at least, they seem to do it on Saturdays and Sundays. Or Sundays, I guess. Now, this bookstore is just inching along, inching its way toward opening for business, I guess. Looks like the shelves are organized, and they have some displays in the window and all that. But if you're looking for the kind of job I used to want, you can email the Seaburn Group. This was there used to be a Seaburn Books on Broadway. I think it's been over 10 years since it closed, so I was surprised to see this place rise up again. It's going to be quite a bit smaller, but they've been inching their way toward opening for like over a year now. I think I first started seeing signage here in like November of 2020, was it? I don't know. It's been a long time. And they're obviously in no hurry. It's owned by a married couple, an African man and a Greek woman. I wonder if that isn't her on that book cover. It had, in its past iteration, it would have some pretty eccentric pairings on the shelves. There'd be like 1,000 copies stacked to the ceiling of a single book of poetry by an obscure Ethiopian poet. And next to it there'd be maybe 2 or 3 copies of the New York Times bestsellers of the day. Don't know what it's going to be like here, but it's basically right across the street from me, so it'll be cool to have a bookstore around, but let's see what else they do here besides books. So this is the view from my shower. And I don't see this view too often because I sit when I shower, and I usually keep the window closed. It's an opaque glass window, of course, because it's a bathroom, so you can't see out or in. I see lots of squirrels run up and down that fire escape, and it can startle me. The white building off in the distance, so I guess it's like just above center of the screen. That was a series of nightclubs. I think one time it was called DNA, and went through a bunch of names, but I think it was always the same owners. And it was really hugely popular, and you could hear the music pounding from it, but it wasn't deafeningly loud, and it wasn't really even it was no problem. But it was hugely popular. They bring in busloads of kids from like Long Island and the whole tri-state area, but even more than that, like a friend of mine, or someone else who lives in this building, said he was down in Miami, and on the radio they were advertising this place like big time. So this place was popular like all over the country, I guess. I don't know the nightclub circuit at all, but maybe it's not uncommon for people to travel 1,000 miles because a nightclub is so damn hot. I've never been into one as far as I can recall, although I could easily have forgotten. But one friend of mine said that I was the perfect candidate to do ecstasy in a club, but I've never done that. Anyway, I wanted to wrap up I gave up trying to shoot video out in the snow, and now that I say that, it looks like the snow stopped, but there was just too much coming down earlier. But I wanted to wrap up my documentary complaint with, I don't want to sound like I'm dropping names here, but and maybe it's not name dropping if nobody here has heard of this person, but I'm friends with Joey Skaggs. And we're not buddies, but we talk like maybe twice a year. He is said to be the world's greatest living prankster. And if you're familiar with his work, you know that his main target of punking people or punking institutions is he goes after the media. He doesn't really go after individuals per se, but most of his work is targeted at showing how gullible the media is, or the media are, for anything that'll get them a story, anything that'll get them a headline, anything that today we would say anything that'll get them clicks, clickbait. And he's very good. He's very good at what he does. But if you want to look for him, that's Joey Skaggs, spelled Skaggs. We connected because he was in love with my Link NYC softy shenanigan, and we've been friends ever since. But I described this whole documentary situation to him, and he would be a knowledgeable person because he had a film made about him. And he basically indicated I should just stay away from this, even though I was already heavily involved. I mean, I already been in it for a good long time. But he said, dude, you really needed to sign some kind of paperwork up front. And I knew that going in, but I just decided to wing it. Because I liked what this director had done. I liked what this filmmaker had done. Her other stuff was really elegant and classy. But he seemed to agree with me that the whole arrangement just wasn't a good fit. I don't really care about the wasted time, but because I can waste time like a champion, I can waste time with the best of them. And so what? I did it again, right? But if he says I should get out, he would know. He would know. I trust his judgment.